Welcome back to my nearly 500,000 incredible subscribers. Today, we are going to continue learning English with a book. This is a very famous book, The Secret Garden. As you can see, last time in part 1, we made our way through chapter 1, going line by line, explaining vocabulary, paraphrasing, practicing our listening, reading, and speaking skills. At the end of chapter 1, I asked you guys for 1,000 likes to unlock chapter 2. Well, guess what happened? That video ended up getting over 25,000 likes. I was really shocked. I was really blown away. Yeah, my mind was blown. Thank you guys so much for the support. We are reading chapter 2 today. As long as you guys keep supporting my videos, I will keep making them. So let's very briefly, very quickly remember what happened in chapter 1. Okay? Mary Lennox, she is a sickly and selfish child, this little girl. She's raised in India, okay? Raised by servants who always gave in to her. Her parents didn't really like her, didn't want to be around her. So she was raised by servants who kind of spoiled her, right? Gave her everything she wanted. Well, in chapter 1, something terrible happened. Mary, our main character, suddenly found herself completely alone after a terrible disease broke out and killed her parents and the servants, the staff. Soldiers discover her, right? They find her days later, and she learns from them. They tell her that she must go back to England and live with her mysterious uncle, Archibald Craven. Okay? So a little girl who loses her parents and has to leave the country where she's living to live with her uncle. That's what happened in chapter 1. Let's go ahead and dive into chapter 2. Just like last time, I'm going to go line by line, explaining and paraphrasing as I go. Remember, paraphrasing means saying something many different ways in order to understand it better. Saying the same thing different ways, okay? That is going to help with your reading comprehension. It's going to help you understand the story. So, chapter 2, Mistress Mary quite contrary. Okay, let's just dive in. Mary had liked to look at her mother from a distance, and she had thought her very pretty. But as she knew very little of her, she could scarcely have been expected to love her or to miss her very much when she was gone. Okay, so basically, this little girl, Mary, she liked to look at her mom. She thought her mom was pretty or attractive, beautiful, but she didn't really know her mom. They weren't really familiar, right? They didn't know each other very well, so she could scarcely or hardly have been expected to love her or to miss her. In other words, their relationship wasn't very good, right? She did not miss her at all, in fact. And as she was a self-absorbed child, she gave her entire thought to herself as she had always done. So she didn't miss her mom. Pretty cold, right? She was self-absorbed, meaning she doesn't really care about other people. She just cares about herself. She's so, we could also say, into herself. Yeah, she's so into herself. She's not really into other people, okay? If she had been older, she would no doubt have been very anxious at being left alone in the world. But she was very young, And as she had always been taken care of, she supposed she always would be. So I would say that Mary is very naive. Naive, right? She doesn't know that much about life. She's very young. She doesn't realize what a huge deal this is, what a big deal this is, what a problem this is that her parents have been killed by this disease. She thinks, oh, someone will keep taking care of me, no problem. Maybe if she was older, she would realize how serious that situation is, right? What she thought was that she would like to know if she was going to nice people who would be polite to her and give her her own way as her ayah and the other native servants had done. So this is what she's curious about, okay? Am I going to keep getting my way? Getting her own way or getting her way? Meaning, is she going to be able to keep doing whatever she wants and not have to listen to anybody? Okay? That's her big question. We're going to find out. She knew that she was not going to stay at the English clergyman's house where she was taken at first. Okay, she was first taken to a clergyman's house. What is a clergyman? Maybe a priest, a minister. It means a religious leader who is a man, a clergyman. Okay, a clergyman, somebody from the church. Okay, so she was taken there to stay with him, but she did not want to stay. The English clergyman was poor, and he had 5 children, all nearly or about the same age, and they wore shabby clothes and were always quarreling and snatching toys from each other. Okay, so Mary is not excited about staying with this guy. His 5 kids, they're all about the same age. They have shabby clothes. So, they're not spoiled like Mary. They don't have expensive clothes, nice clothes like her. Okay? Their clothes are shabby, so maybe a little cheap, a little old. They're always quarreling. This is an old way to say maybe fighting, arguing. Another good word is bickering if it's not too serious. Not too serious, just kind of squabbling. Smaller arguments, we can say they're bickering, a little passive-aggressive, right? They're snatching toys, grabbing toys from each other. So that sounds like a chaotic household, right? I would not want to be around that either. Mary hated their untidy or messy bungalow, their house, and was so disagreeable to them that after the first day or two, nobody would play with her. So the other kids don't want anything to do with her, right? By the second day, they had given her a nickname, which made her furious. They'd given her a nickname. I wonder what they're calling her. It was Basil who thought of it first. Basil was a little boy with impudent blue eyes and a turned-up nose, and Mary hated him. Okay, so Basil, or in British English, maybe they would say Basil. Okay, Basil or Basil. He has impudent eyes. Impudent. What does this mean? It means rude and disrespectful, especially towards somebody older or somebody who's an authority. So, for example, the student gave an impudent reply to the teacher. Okay? If a student gives a teacher an impudent reply, maybe they say something rude, disrespectful. So this kid has an impudent look in his blue eyes, turned up nose, his nose points upwards, right? Mary hated him. He came up with a nickname for her, a special name that she doesn't like. Let's see what it is. She was playing by herself under a tree, just as she had been playing the day the cholera broke out, that disease that killed her family and her servants, right? She was making heaps of earth and paths for a garden, so piles of dirt digging around in the garden, and Basil came and stood near to watch her. Maybe he's a little curious about her. Presently, he got rather interested and suddenly made a suggestion. So presently, maybe we can say at this moment, suddenly, right? Why don't you put a heap of stones there and pretend it is a rockery, he said, there in the middle. And he leaned over to point. What is a rockery? It's like when you have a pile of stones making a structure in a garden, okay? Like maybe little piles of rocks with some small plants growing between them. Part of a garden made of rocks, a rockery. You don't really see that word too much, okay? So he's giving her a suggestion. Why don't you make a rockery? Go away, cried Mary. I don't want boys. Go away. She doesn't want to play with boys. Okay. For a moment, Basil looked angry. And then he began to tease, or maybe we could say mess with her. Yeah, kind of push her buttons, tease her, mess with her. He was always teasing his sisters. He danced round and round her and made faces and sang and laughed. So she's like, I don't want to do what you say. I'm not going to listen to you. Get out of here. I'm not going to play with you. I don't want to play with boys. He decides he's going to mess with her. So what does he do? He starts to taunt her, provoke her. In other words, try to make her angry. He says, Mistress Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and marigolds all in a row. Okay. So, a couple of words here. Cockle. It's like a small sea creature with a shell. Okay. He's talking about a shell here. Marigold is a bright yellow or orange flower that you see in gardens. Okay, so anyway, the main thing she doesn't like here isn't about the shells or the flowers. It's Mistress Mary quite contrary. He's calling her a contrarian. In other words, she does the opposite of what people tell her to do. She is not well behaved. If someone is a contrarian, then they're not very agreeable, okay? They won't agree with what you say. They won't do what you want them to do. They go against you, not with you, okay? So that's what he's calling her. He's teasing her, making fun of her. He sang it until the other children heard and laughed too. And the crosser or angrier Mary got, the more they sang, Mistress Mary, quite contrary. And after that, as long as she stayed with them, they called her Mistress Mary, quite contrary, when they spoke of her to each other, and often when they spoke to her. So even to her face, they're calling her this nickname, Mistress Mary, quite contrary. That's going to drive her up a wall. Drive her up a wall. In other words, make her upset, make her angry. You are going to be sent home, Basil said to her, at the end of the week, and we're glad of it. We're glad of it. In other words, we're happy you are leaving. I am glad of it too, answered Mary. Where is home? She doesn't know where home is, said Basil, with 7-year-old scorn. What is scorn? Scorn is kind of like anger, kind of like hatred, kind of like being cruel or mean to someone. It's England, of course. Our grandmama lives there, and our sister Mabel was sent to her last year. You are not going to your grandmama. You have none. You don't have a grandmother, right? You are going to your uncle. His name is Mr. Archibald Craven. I don't know anything about him, snapped Mary. Love this word here, snapped. If you think about maybe a twig, a branch, a piece of wood, you can snap it, break it, right? Well, if we snap at someone, then we talk to them suddenly and angrily, kind of like we can't control our anger, can't hold back our temper or our anger, right? Okay. So she says, I don't know anything about him. I know you don't, Basil answered. You don't know anything. Girls never do. I heard father and mother talking about him. He lives in a great, big, desolate old house in the country, and no one goes near him. Desolate, so kind of abandoned. Maybe it's not well taken care of. There's not many people there. It's lonely and cold and not a great place to go, right? No one goes near him. We're learning more about her uncle. He's so cross or such an angry person, he won't let anyone come near him, right? And they wouldn't come if he would let them. He's a hunchback and he's horrid. Okay, so his back is hunched over. We call that a hunchback. If your posture is very bad, there's his back, here's his head down here. There's his legs and his arms. We can see his back is bent over, right? And he's horrid. In other words, he's horrible. He's nasty. He's awful. I don't believe you, said Mary. And she turned around and stuck her fingers in her ears because she would not listen anymore. So she's learning, right, that she has to go live with this awful old man out in the country, and he's a horrid old man. She doesn't want to believe it. She's having trouble accepting this. But she thought over it a great deal afterward. She's thinking about this. And when Mrs. Crawford told her that night that she was going to sail away to England in a few days and going to her uncle, Mr. Archibald Craven, who lived at Misselthwaite Manor, this big old house, Misselthwaite Manor, she looked so stony and stubbornly uninterested that they did not know what to think about her. Gave them a very stony look. Maybe we could say what? Cold, unfriendly, not showing any emotion. If you give someone a stony stare, they don't look very approachable or agreeable, okay? They tried to be kind to her, tried to be nice to Mary, but she only turned her face away when Mrs. Crawford attempted or tried to kiss her and held herself stiffly when Mr. Crawford patted her shoulder. So she is really not engaging with them. It's almost like she's ignoring them, right? She is such a plain child, Mrs. Crawford said pityingly afterward. And her mother was such a pretty creature and had a very pretty manner, too. And Mary has the most unattractive ways I ever saw in a child. So afterwards, they're kind of gossiping about this disagreeable little girl, Mary, right? Mr. and Mrs. Crawford, they're trying to be nice to her. She's not really giving them anything to work with. Not giving them anything to work with, right? Not being agreeable, being really hard to deal with. So they're kind of gossiping about her, calling her plain. That just means not attractive, not beautiful. They're saying, her mom was really beautiful, and had a very pretty manner, right? A way of treating people, a way of acting. But Mary's very different than her mom, right? The children call her Mistress Mary, quite contrary, and though it's naughty of them, one can't help understanding it. So the parents are like, yeah, it's kind of mean that the kids are calling her that, but you know what? We get it. We get it. It makes sense. We understand. Perhaps if her mother had carried her pretty face and her pretty manners oftener into the nursery, Mary might have learned some pretty ways too. It is very sad. Now the poor beautiful thing is gone, to remember that many people never even knew that she had a child at all. This part's kind of interesting, right? They're saying maybe if her mom spent more time with her, she would have made more of an impression or an impact on Mary. Yeah, she would have influenced her, made an impact on her, made an impression on her, a good impression, right? But the mom didn't like Mary, didn't really want to spend time with her, didn't want to be around her, so it's no surprise, right? Mrs. Crawford is still talking here. I believe she scarcely ever looked at her, so she didn't really give her attention, right? Sighed Mrs. Crawford. When her ayah, or her servant, was dead, there was no one to give a thought to the little thing. Think of the servants running away and leaving her all alone in that deserted bungalow. Deserted bungalow. This is a kind of house, a bungalow, right? Deserted, meaning everyone ran away. Say that with me. Deserted. Deserted. Yeah, it emptied out. Everyone's gone. Everyone fled or ran for their lives, right? Colonel McGrew said he nearly jumped out of his skin. Ooh, good expression. When he opened the door and found her standing by herself in the middle of the room. So this colonel, it's a hard word to pronounce in English, right? It looks like colonel, but we say colonel. It means a high-ranking officer in the army, a very important man in the army. He went, and he was the one who found her, in this deserted bungalow, this abandoned house. Everyone else was gone. She was there standing by herself, and he nearly jumped out of his skin. In other words, it scared him half to death. Scared him half to death. We could also say what? Scared the lights out of him. Scared the lights out of him. Really gave him a good scare. Mary made the long voyage or trip to England under the care of an officer's wife. So one of the army guys, his wife is taking care of her, right? Who was taking her children to leave them in a boarding school, a type of school where children stay there. They live at the school, a boarding school. She was very much absorbed in her own little boy and girl. This wife is, right? Maybe not paying too much attention to Mary, and was rather glad to hand the child over to the woman Mr. Archibald Craven sent to meet her in London. Man, poor Mary. Nobody cares about her, right? Even this wife who was looking after her, taking care of her on the voyage or trip to England. The wife doesn't even want to pay attention to her. The wife is preoccupied. Preoccupied or busy with her own kids, right? She's happy to hand Mary over to this woman who Mr. Archibald Craven sent to meet her in London. Okay, so finally, Mary's in London, And her uncle, remember, this is her uncle, sends a woman to collect her, to greet her, to meet her, to get her, and take her home, okay? The woman was his housekeeper at Misselthwaite Manor, and her name was Mrs. Medlock. Okay, so Mrs. Medlock, we've got a new character. That's the housekeeper, kind of like a servant or a maid, kind of like a butler. She was a stout woman with very red cheeks and sharp black eyes. Stout, so maybe short and wide. She's not very tall or thin. The opposite, she's short and wide, right? She wore a very purple dress, a black silk mantle with jet fringes on it, and a black bonnet with purple velvet flowers which stuck up and trembled or shook when she moved her head. So it's describing how she looks, right? Talking about a mantle, right? Here she has a silk mantle. That's kind of like a cloak or a coat that does not have any sleeves, any arms, okay? Talking about a bonnet. What's a bonnet? It's a woman's hat or a child's hat, kind of old-fashioned, and it ties under your chin, right? So, if this is a woman's head, maybe the bonnet's on top of her head like this, and you tie it under the chin. That's where you tie it, okay? But it's an old-fashioned hat. You don't really see bonnets worn anymore. Just describing the way Mrs. Medlock looks. Mary did not like her at all. Surprise, surprise, right? Who does Mary like? I don't think she likes anybody. But as she very seldom liked people, there was nothing remarkable in that. In other words, Mary doesn't like anybody, so it's not a surprise, right? Not a surprise at all. Besides which it was very evident Mrs. Medlock did not think much of her. Okay, so basically what this is saying, Mary doesn't like Mrs. Medlock doesn't like Mary. Okay, this relationship is not off to a good start, not off to a great start. We could also say they are getting off on the wrong foot. Get off on the wrong foot, meaning their relationship does not start well, does not begin well. They dislike each other from the very beginning. My word, she's a plain little piece of goods, she said, and we'd heard that her mother was a beauty. She hasn't handed much of it down, has she, ma'am? Oh, no. So immediately, Mrs. Medlock is saying, wow, I heard Mary's mother was beautiful, but she is not beautiful. That's so rude. What a horrible thing to say to a little kid, right? No wonder Mary hates everybody. People are very cruel to her. Let's continue here. Perhaps she will improve as she grows older, the officer's wife said good-naturedly. Good-naturedly. So she's trying to be mature about this, trying to think positive, right? If she were not so sallow and had a nicer expression, her features are rather good. Children alter or change so much. So she's saying, her expression, Mary's expression, the way her face looks is sallow, meaning, she looks kind of pale. She looks even a little bit yellow. That's what sallow is. It means your skin looks unhealthy. For example, after being ill for weeks, after being sick for weeks, his face looked sallow and tired. Okay? Kind of sickly looking. Basically, she's saying, you know what? Maybe she's just not feeling well. I'm sure that if she smiled more, she would look nicer. And, maybe once she changes when she's older, she will be more beautiful. She'll have to alter a good deal, answered Mrs. Medlock. So mean. Oh my God. Mrs. Medlock is saying, well, if she's going to look beautiful someday, she had better change a lot. She needs to change a lot if she is going to look beautiful. And there's nothing likely to improve children at Misselthwaite, if you ask me. So basically, this is not going to be a good place for Mary. They thought Mary was not listening because she was standing a little apart from them at the window of the private hotel they had gone to. So they're at this hotel. They don't think Mary can hear. But what was Mary doing? She was watching the passing buses and cabs, taxis, and people, but she heard quite well and was made very curious about her uncle and the place he lived in. What sort of a place was it, and what would he be like? What was a hunchback? She still doesn't know what that is. She had never seen one. Perhaps there were none in India. Remember, that's all Mary knows. She grew up in India with these servants, right? So these two women, they don't realize Mary is listening, but she is. What's another way to say listening secretly? If you are secretly listening to someone, we call that do you know it? Do you know it? Secretly listening is called eavesdropping. Secretly listening to somebody, eavesdropping. Okay. Since she had been living in other people's houses and had had no ayah, no maid, she had begun to feel lonely and to think queer or strange thoughts, which were new to her. She had begun to wonder why she had never seemed to belong to anyone, even when her father and mother had been alive. So Mary's really reflecting on her life, thinking about the conditions of her life, right? The way things have been. Why has she never felt a sense of belonging or family, like she belongs to someone, right? She's questioning that. Other children seem to belong to their fathers and mothers, but she had never seemed to really be anyone's little girl. She's feeling all alone, right? She had had servants and food and clothes, but no one had taken any notice of her. In other words, no one had paid attention, or we could say, no one had cared about her. She did not know that this was because she was a disagreeable child, hard to get along with. But then, of course, she did not know she was disagreeable. So she's not trying to be difficult. She's not trying to be unlikable, right? It's just the way she is. She often thought that other people were disagreeable, but she did not know that she was so herself. So she doesn't really think of herself this way, right? She doesn't see herself that way. She thought Mrs. Medlock the most disagreeable person she had ever seen. Wow, with her common, highly colored face and her common fine bonnet. So her common face, maybe we could say plain, maybe we could say ordinary, nothing special, not beautiful, not ugly, just, here's another good word, average, middle of the pack, okay? Middle of the pack, average face, average clothes, right? When the next day they set out on their journey to Yorkshire, she walked through the station to the railway carriage, the train, with her head up and trying to keep as far away from her as she could, does not want to be anywhere near Mrs. Medlock because she did not want to seem to belong to her. Mary doesn't want people to think that they are together. Maybe she's even a little bit embarrassed. Remember that Mary's a very spoiled kid who gets whatever she wants, and she's from a very rich family, right? It would have made her very angry to think people imagined she was her little girl. So she doesn't want people to get the wrong idea. Get the wrong idea. Or we can say get the wrong impression. She doesn't want people to mistakenly think that they are together. I'm not with her, right? But Mrs. Medlock was not in the least disturbed or bothered by her and her thoughts. She was the kind of woman who would stand no nonsense from young ones. She does not put up with little kids. Little kids must follow the rules. She's very strict, in other words, strict. At least that is what she would have said if she had been asked. She had not wanted to go to London just when her sister Maria's daughter was going to be married, but she had a comfortable, well-paid place as housekeeper at Misselthwaite Manor, and the only way in which she could keep it was to do at once what Mr. Archibald Craven told her to do. She never dared even to ask a question. Wow. Okay, so what is going through Mrs. Medlock's mind right now? What is she thinking? She's thinking, hey, I don't want to be here. I didn't want to go to London when my sister Maria's daughter was going to be married. So there's a wedding she wants to go to. She has a sister named Maria, and Maria has a daughter, and her sister's daughter is getting married, and she wants to go to that instead of dealing with Mary. But you know what? She wants to keep her job. Her job is a really comfortable, well-paid job. Yeah, it's a nice gig. It's a nice gig. Gig is like a job. It's a nice gig. She doesn't want to lose it. So she can't question her boss's instructions. She can't say no. Captain Lennox and his wife died of the cholera. That's her parents, right? Mary's parents. They died of cholera. Mr. Craven had said in his short, cold way, Captain Lennox was my wife's brother. Oh, okay. So Mary's dad is his wife's brother. Okay. Archibald Craven's wife's brother is Mary's dad. Is that hard to understand? A little bit complicated, their relationship. And I am their daughter's guardian, her uncle. Guardian, someone who will take care of her. The child is to be brought here. You must go to London and bring her yourself. So that's her uncle giving instructions to Mrs. Medlock, right? So Mrs. Medlock, she packed her small trunk, a little suitcase, and made the journey. Back then, it was a big deal to travel far, to travel a far distance, right? You can't just hop on a plane like we do today. Mary sat in her corner of the railway carriage on the train and looked plain and fretful, like she's worrying about stuff, fretful, like she's stressed out. She had nothing to read or to look at, and she had folded her thin little black-gloved hands in her lap. Hands folded in her lap. Her black dress made her look yellower than ever. Remember, she's got kind of a sallow look on her face, yellow and unhealthy. Okay, so the color of her dress is making her look even more unhealthy. And her limp, light hair straggled from under her black crepe hat. Okay. So what is a crepe hat? There's a certain kind of fabric. It's very thin, this material. It's like kind of crinkly, kind of bunched up, called crepe. Okay, that's what her hat is made out of. All right. Usually, I think this is worn at funerals when somebody dies. So, Mary is not looking very good. And you can imagine this poor kid is going crazy. She's on this long train journey with nothing to do. Back then, you couldn't just scroll Instagram, scroll TikTok. You had to find other ways to entertain yourself. And sometimes you would just sit and be bored and stare into space, right? Stare at nothing. Okay, let's keep going. A more marred-looking young one I never saw in my life, Mrs. Medlock thought. Marred-looking. She's looking at Mary thinking, wow, she looks really marred, meaning damaged, meaning doesn't look good. Oh, there's a little explanation here as well. Marred is a Yorkshire word and means spoiled and pettish. Okay, so she's looking at Mary thinking, you look bad. You look like you get everything you want. You look like a spoiled brat. That's what we say in American English. What a brat. If you describe a little girl this way, or sometimes a boy, it means, wow, they walk all over their parents. They cannot be controlled by their parents. They get everything they want, right? They've got a nasty attitude. She had never seen a child who sat so still without doing anything. And at last, she got tired of watching her and began to talk in a brisk, hard voice. Brisk, meaning kind of quick, kind of fast. So what is she saying to Mary? I suppose I may as well tell you something about where you're going to, she said. Do you know anything about your uncle? No, said Mary. Never heard your father and mother talk about him? No, said Mary, frowning. She frowned because she remembered that her father and mother had never talked to her about anything in particular. Oh, so sad, right? That's why she's frowning. She's like, my parents never told me anything, much less about my uncle. We didn't just not talk about my uncle. We didn't talk about anything. Certainly, they had never told her things. Humph, muttered Mrs. Medlock, staring at her queer or strange, unresponsive little face. Unresponsive. So she's not really answering. She's just giving one-word replies, one-word answers, just saying no, no, no. Pretty unresponsive or not saying anything back. She did not say any more for a few moments, and then she began again. I suppose you might as well be told something to prepare you. You are going to a queer place. Going to a very weird place. Mary said nothing at all, and Mrs. Medlock looked rather discomfited by her apparent indifference. But after taking a breath, she went on. Okay, here's a hard sentence. This woman looked rather discomfited by her apparent indifference. Okay, discomfited. I don't see this word used very much. It means you feel kind of uncomfortable, kind of confused. For example, someone is asked a difficult question. They were made discomfited by the difficult question, and they maybe don't know what to say. But Mary has apparent indifference. Apparent just means, it's clear to see. If you look at her, you will see that she is indifferent, or she has indifference. Okay, what does that mean? Indifference is like you don't care one way or the other. You don't really care. You don't have an opinion. Okay? So she's like, why doesn't Mary care that she's going to a weird Horrible place. Why doesn't she care? It's like nothing can get through to Mary. Nothing can really bother her, right? Not but that it's a grand big place in a gloomy way, and Mr. Craven's proud of it in his way, and that's gloomy enough too. The house is 600 years old. Wow. 600 years old, so it's gloomy, meaning kind of dark, kind of depressing. And even though it's depressing, Archibald Craven, Mr. Craven, is like proud of the house. It's like he's proud that it's so depressing. So that's kind of weird, right? It's really old. It's on the edge of the moor. Ooh, here's a word that's maybe a little confusing. What is a moor? This is something you see in northern England, okay? It's like a large area of open, wild land. So big, big fields with rough grass. There's some grass, but it might not be beautiful grass, kind of rough looking, and some bushes, right? I think it could be a little gloomy, a little dreary, a moor, okay? And there's near 100 rooms in it. No way. There's 100 rooms, almost 100 rooms, near 100 rooms in this house, so almost 100, though most of them's shut up and locked. And there's pictures and fine old furniture and things that's been there for ages, and there's a big park around it, and gardens and trees with branches trailing to the ground, some of them. So she's describing the grounds in and around the manor. Remember, a manor is like a fancy old house, a really big mansion, right? There's all sorts of stuff around this manor, trees, gardens, okay? She paused or stopped for a second and took another breath. But there's nothing else, she ended suddenly. Okay. Mary had begun to listen in spite of herself. In spite of herself. What does that mean? Okay. That means she had been indifferent, right? She didn't really care to listen, but she had started to listen anyway. So kind of going against what she thought she would do, in spite of herself. Okay. It all sounded so unlike India. And anything new rather attracted her. Okay, so it's piqued her interest. Piqued her interest. It's gotten her attention, right? But she did not intend to look as if she were interested. That was one of her unhappy, disagreeable ways. So she sat still. This is funny. She is interested. She does care, right, about what Mrs. Medlock is telling her, describing this interesting, bizarre, old house with 100 rooms. She's interested, but she does not intend to look interested, does not plan on looking interested. No. She's not going to reveal that she's interested. She's going to keep sitting there looking uninterested, right? Well, said Mrs. Medlock, what do you think of it? Nothing, she answered. I know nothing about such places. That made Mrs. Medlock laugh, a short sort of laugh. She said, but you are like an old woman. Don't you care? All right, she's like, don't you care about where you're going? It doesn't matter, said Mary, whether I care or not. You are right enough there, said Mrs. Medlock. In other words, you have a point. That's true. It doesn't matter. What you are to be kept at Misselthwaite Manor for, I don't know, unless because it's the easiest way. So what you're to be kept there for, I don't know. In other words, I don't know why you are being kept there. It's probably just because it's the easiest thing to do, right? He's not going to trouble himself about you. That's sure and certain. He never troubles himself about no one. Okay. In other words, don't expect this old man to pay attention to you. He's not going to notice you at all. She stopped herself as if she had just remembered something in time. He's got a crooked back, she said. Crooked. Here's a straight line. Here's a crooked line, right? Bent, not straight, crooked. That set him wrong. He was a sour young man and got no good of all his money and big place till he was married. Interesting. Mary's eyes turned towards her in spite of her intention not to seem to care. We see in spite of again, okay? So she's trying to make it seem like she doesn't care, but in spite of that, or we could say despite that, she looks like she cares anyway, right? She had never thought of the hunchback's being married, hadn't expected him to be married, and she was a trifle surprised. We don't use this word very much. It means a little bit, a trifle surprised, a little surprised. Mrs. Medlock saw this, and as she was a talkative woman, great word here, talkative, means you like to talk a lot. She continued with more interest. This was one way of passing some of the time, at any rate. At any rate just means anyway. Okay? So, they're on this train. They have a long ways to go, right? They need to find something to do at any rate, right? So she's like, okay, well, Mary looks a little bit interested, at least. I will keep talking. She was a sweet, pretty thing, and he'd have walked the world over to get her a blade of grass she wanted. Talking about Mary's uncle, Archibald Craven's wife, right? She was sweet and she was pretty, and he would have walked the world over to get her a blade of grass, meaning he would have done anything for her. He really cared about her, right? Nobody thought she'd marry him, but she did, and people said she married him for his money. He's very rich, has a lot of money. So people were suspicious of this marriage. They were suspicious of it, right? They thought, hey, that's not for love, it's for money. But she didn't. She didn't, positively. When she died, Mary gave a little involuntary jump. Involuntary, great word, means she didn't mean to. She couldn't help it. It was a reaction that she could not control. Oh, did she die? Mary exclaimed, meaning kind of said in an excited way, maybe shouted, quite without meaning to. She had just remembered a French fairy story, maybe a fairy tale she had once read called, let's see my French pronunciation here. I believe it's Riquet à la Houppe. Riquet à la Houppe. It had been about a poor hunchback and a beautiful princess, and it had made her suddenly sorry for Mr. Archibald Craven. So she's feeling bad for him now. She's feeling a sense of pity for him. Oh, this poor man, his beautiful wife, who he loved, passed away. She died. Yes, she died, Mrs. Medlock answered, and it made him queerer than ever, stranger than ever. He cares about nobody. He won't see people. Maybe he's a bit of a recluse. A recluse is someone who stays in their house and they do not go out into the world. They do not socialize, right? He cares about nobody. He won't see people. Most of the time he goes away, and when he is at Misselthwaite, this big house, right, he shuts himself up in the west wing and won't let anyone but Pitcher see him. Who's Pitcher? Pitcher's an old fellow, but he took care of him when he was a child, and he knows his ways. Wow, okay. So this old man has an even older man named Pitcher who takes care of him. And it looks like they grew up together, right? When Archibald Craven was a little kid, Pitcher would take care of him. Now they're both old, and Pitcher is still taking care of him. It sounded like something in a book, and it did not make Mary feel cheerful. So this is a real bummer of a story. What's a bummer? It bums you out, makes you feel sad. Yeah, bums you out. Kind of depressing, this story, right? Okay. A house with 100 rooms, nearly all shut up with their doors locked. A house on the edge of a moor. Whatsoever a moor was sounded dreary. Whatsoever a moor was, she doesn't even know what a moor is. She's not sure, but it sounds dreary, depressing, gloomy, right? Makes you feel sad. A man with a crooked back who shut himself up also. She stared out of the window with her lips pinched together. So her lips are pressed or pinched together really tight. And it seemed quite natural that the rain should have begun to pour down in gray, slanting lines and splash, and stream or pour down the window panes. Wow, so she's being told this gloomy story, and then, as if on cue, right on cue, it starts to rain. She's like, yeah, it makes sense that it's raining. Of course it's raining. This is the most depressing story I've ever heard, so naturally it's raining. If the pretty wife had been alive, she might have made things cheerful by being something like her own mother and by running in and out and going to parties as she had done in frocks full of lace, but she was not there anymore. Last page, guys, we're almost done with chapter 2. Mary saying, man, if my uncle's sweet, pretty wife was still alive, that would help things, but she's dead, so we don't even have that. You needn't expect to see him because 10 to 1, you won't. 10 to 1. In other words, chances are, right? What's most likely to happen is that you won't see him. And you mustn't expect that there will be people to talk to you. You'll have to play about and look after yourself. You'll be told what rooms you can go into and what rooms you're to keep out of. There's gardens enough, so there are some gardens you can walk around in or play in. But when you are in the house, don't go wandering and poking about. Wandering, exploring. Mr. Craven won't have it. Great expression. I won't have it. Meaning, that will make me angry. That would be unacceptable. I won't stand for that. I shall not want to go poking about, said sour little Mary. And just as suddenly as she had begun to be rather sorry for Mr. Archibald Craven, she began to cease to be sorry, to stop feeling sorry. Cease means stop, right? Stop feeling sorry, and to think he was unpleasant enough to deserve all that had happened to him. Okay, so Mary had started to feel bad, but now she's being told about all these rules. You shouldn't go exploring, wandering, poking about. And now she's thinking, you know what? I don't feel bad for this guy anymore. If there's going to be all of these rules, he deserves everything that happened to him. He deserved it. I'm glad it happened to him. And she turned her face towards the streaming panes of the window. Rain is coming down, streaming down the window, right? Of the railway carriage, the train, and gazed or stared out at the gray rainstorm, which looked as if it would go on forever and ever. She's feeling very gloomy in this moment. She watched it so long and steadily that the grayness grew heavier and heavier before her eyes, and she fell asleep. If you are still listening, still watching, take your hand and give yourself a pat on the back to congratulate yourself because you deserve it, my friend. You did a great job. Let's very quickly summarize what happened in this chapter just to make sure we understand. Basically, here's what happened. This little girl, Mary, she travels to England and she is met by a very strict woman there. There's a housekeeper named Mrs. Medlock, right? Mrs. Medlock is a very strict, very severe woman, a severe woman. She's very serious, right? And she tells Mary that her uncle lives in this huge, gloomy old house in a gloomy place, and he's kind of a recluse. Remember that word? Kind of a shut-in. He doesn't see people. He's not social. And they're on the train, right? And Mary is learning more about her uncle, Mr. Archibald Craven, learning, shockingly, that his beautiful wife died. And she begins to become a little bit curious about him, right? So that's what happened in this chapter. Man, that was a pretty long chapter. Now, guys, if you made it all the way through this video and you are not a channel member, I highly recommend you become one. If you click join on my channel and become a member for only $1, you will get access to tons of bonus videos that normal subscribers cannot see. You will get tons of PDFs for my videos to help you remember everything you've learned. You will get early access to some videos, meaning you will be able to watch them before anybody else. And most importantly, it supports me. It makes my work possible. Okay? Without my members, this channel would not be possible. After all, I'm just one person. I don't have an editor. I don't have a team of people. It's just me. So with the support of my members, I'm able to keep going. Thank you so much to members new and old. I love you guys. You make this channel possible. Make sure you've left me a comment on this video saying hello, saying where you're watching from. Make sure you've clicked like. And guys, I will see you again next time for part 3. Bye-bye.